What's up, everybody? And welcome to another episode of Ask PJ Braun. And I have a very, very special guest here on Skype with me. This is last year's NPC USA heavyweight champion, Nathan Epler. Nathan, how are you?
Doing well, PJ. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You're looking very lean over there.
I'm trying. We're trying. 16 weeks out, so just getting very excited and changing fast now.
Do you stay lean all the time?
I do. Yeah. So I've always been a little bit of a smaller person, and typically, I stay fairly lean. Even with higher food amounts, I usually stay fairly lean, even in the off season.
Yeah, I've never seen a picture of you not looking lean, which is good. We're going to go through some history with Nathan Epler, but just to get you guys excited, Nathan said he is not afraid to talk about some of his gear protocols, so we're going to get into that as we go along. But I want to go all the way back. We got about an hour. I am late. It is my fault, so we're going to crank through some content with him. But I want to go all the way back to the beginning. Let's talk about where you were born, where you grew up, a little bit about your childhood. You don't have to give us the full biography. I just want people to know a little bit about, your background, where you're from.
Yeah, sure. So I'm born and raised here in Greenwood, Indiana. We are probably about 20 minutes south of Indianapolis, so central, middle of the state. Like I said, born and raised here, went to school at Greenwood. I still live in Greenwood, and that's.
So you never really left Greenwood?
No. I mean, I bought a house that was one city south of Greenwood in Whiteland, but I just recently sold that house, and we moved back to Greenwood.
Is Greenwood country?
No, it's pretty heavily populated. Okay. And actually, it's grown a lot in the last 10 or 15 years or so. And now it's almost pretty landlocked. It's actually hard to find housing in Greenwood because it is so heavily populated. It's a very nice area. But yeah, it's not in the country. If you go a little bit south, 20 minutes south of Greenwood, then you start getting into the country a little bit more.
I was out in some serious country for an event that I did at my buddy Tom's gym. I forget the name of the town, but I think we were like 4 hours south of Indianapolis.
Was it in Evansville?
I think
it was
yeah.
Yeah.
That to me was country.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty country.
So let's go back. I want everybody to get an idea because I already know these things, but let's go back in time a little bit. And because you're a pretty young guy, how old are you?
I'm 25.
So you're only 25. Let's go back in time to when you first got into working out. Like, what got you into working out?
Yeah, so it's pretty funny. Now, the more I think about it, I've always been into fitness and exercising. Even when I was a young kid, like 7, 8 years old, I had a good buddy that lived down the street from me, and his dad had a home gym. And we used to go in there and we used to do dips and pull-ups. And I was very competitive, so I always wanted to see how many pull-ups I could do, how many dips I could do, how many push-ups, crunches. I was always doing that as a little kid, but I never really realized what it would fruition into later down the road. But that's kind of when I started exercising. And my grandfather used to work out a lot as well, and I would watch him. And I was always pretty interested in muscles and veins and, why people were doing certain things. And, and then I started wrestling when I was in 6th grade. So 2006, I started wrestling.
What made you get into wrestling?
It's a funny story. I actually was very tiny. I was so small. Like in 6th grade, I was like 70 pounds.
Wow. Holy shit.
I was tiny. I was a little guy. I was like not even 5 foot tall. And the wrestling coach was an English teacher, and he caught me in the hallway one day, and he said, "How much do you weigh?" "Probably about 75 pounds, right?" And I said, "Yeah, I think 72. And he said, "We need a 75-pounder on the wrestling team. Have you ever wrestled?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Come to practice." And I did, and I got my butt kicked so bad for probably a year or two straight, but that's how I started wrestling, and then I started weight training because of that as well.
So 6th grade, you're 72 pounds. You start wrestling, get into weight training, and you get into high school. Are you still wrestling?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you go through high school wrestling?
Yes, yeah.
What weight classes were you in as a wrestler in high school?
Yeah, so I played a lot of sports growing up. I played football, basketball for 10 years. I was a baseball player for 9 years. And then once I got introduced to wrestling in about my 8th grade year, I started getting better. And then when I entered freshman year, I was 105 pounds.
Wow.
That was 2009.
Mm-hmm.
I was 105 pounds. I wrestled up a weight class in the 112 division because there was a junior that was in the 103 weight class that was better than me. So I wrestled up that year. And then I gave up all the other sports for wrestling because I was getting better. Then 2010, I was a sophomore. I wrestled 125.
Okay.
And then junior year, I wrestled 130. And then senior year, I wrestled 132.
Very, very, for the wrestling people out there, very competitive classes once you get into that 130 range, 132 range. Now, when you were really light, when you first started in high school, did you ever wrestle any girls?
I did.
Because there are a lot of girls that wrestle in those very light weight classes. Yeah. Where I went to school, and so in Danbury, quick little side story. You guys some of you will probably go and like Google this. There was a girl named Susie Levitt that wrestled like 105, and she was, I don't want to misquote myself, but she might have been an All-American. And there was an issue where a lot of the guys didn't want to wrestle her because she was a girl. Mm-hmm. She was also cute, but she was strong. And so a lot of guys didn't want to wrestle her for a girl, but then on the flip side, a lot of guys didn't want to lose to a girl. So there was like a big issue there. Either you're beating up on a girl or you're losing to a girl, but she went very, very far. I wonder where she is now, but obviously she stayed in that weight class the whole time. So you grew, and as you were growing, you stopped playing other sports, right?
Yeah.
It was all wrestling. Wrestlers, I find, always make good bodybuilders.
I agree.
Because you understand the diet cuts and everything else. A lot of people in my family come from wrestling backgrounds. I was never as good as my cousins, but that mindset, I think, is very, very important. So when you were going through school and you were getting ready to graduate, did you have aspirations of playing like or wrestling in college?
Yeah, I was pretty good. By the time I got to my junior, well, and I started wrestling in the off season too. So I was wrestling year round. And I think going back to what you said about wrestlers making great bodybuilders, I think that's so true just because of the level of discipline that wrestling takes, and that if you really want to be successful, you are going to wrestle year round. You're going to tailor your whole life to wrestling. And that's what I did from my sophomore year to my senior year. And I actually wrestled at Fargo, North Dakota for the Nationals with Team Indiana my sophomore year in the off season, so through the summer. And then senior year, I was 31-9 and missed going to state by 1 point at semi-state. So we were getting better. And then I was going to go to college. I went to the University of Indianapolis, and I had several people trying to push me to go on and wrestle in college. But I took a step back, and that's because I was getting into bodybuilding. And I knew I had a passion for weightlifting, and I wanted to get bigger. I didn't want to be 130 pounds anymore. That's how I was all growing up, was small, very small. And so I wanted to get bigger. And then also I wanted to move out with my girlfriend, who is now my wife, and just start working and pursuing more of a career path. And so I kind of left wrestling behind then.
So you were, I just want to make sure everybody understands this. You were 100 and some odd 35 pounds when you graduated high school.
Yeah.
And how tall are you?
I'm 5'9".
And you were 5'9", wrestling at 135?
I was about 5'7".
Okay. So you grew a little bit more, but you were lankier then.
Yeah,
you weren't a short, squatty guy. You were longer.
Yeah.
And when you decided that you were going to take a step back and get into bodybuilding at 135 pounds, what made you think that you had a career in bodybuilding? Like when you were looking at these guys, I assume in the magazines and whatnot, and how big they were at 135, like what was going through your head? I need to gain 100 pounds. I mean, what was going through your head?
It's very funny, and I have a very a lot of people say I have an old soul, and that I act a little bit older than my age. So when I was thinking back then is I didn't even really know much about bodybuilding at the time. I just knew about weightlifting, and I was starting to like look at pictures of like Jay Cutler and these guys. But I never looked too far down the road. I always worried about immediate goals and kind of what I was working on. And I know a lot of people nowadays, they get so wrapped up, and right when they start lifting, they're like, okay, I'm getting a gym membership. I want to take gear, and I want to be a professional next year. And it's almost absurd. And I was very patient. So back, in 2012, when I first, when I really started hitting the weights hard, it was funny. Here's a little side story for you. My wrestling coach was also my strength coach. And when I lost my final match of my senior year, I lost 7-8 to a kid that ended up going to state.
Wow.
And I ran off the mat so I didn't blow up and throw a huge fit. So I ran off. I ran into the back hallway, and my coach followed me out. And the first thing out of his mouth, he looked at me and he said, "Are you ready to get big?"
Oh, hell yeah. I like that.
I still remember that to this day. It's a very, very cool memory that I have. And I looked at him and I smiled. And the first thing I did was get a cheeseburger.
Was he a bigger guy?
Not big. He's actually like 5'5". He was a state champion from a school that was pretty near us. But he was our strength and conditioning coach as well. So he was really teaching me how to lift and, getting into all that. So, yeah, that was a cool thing there.
And do you guys still talk years later?
No, we don't. I mean, I've seen him. I talked to him a couple years ago. I actually, when I was getting a little bit bigger, I went back to my high school weight room to lift. And that was pretty funny because it shocked a lot of people when I walked in over 200 pounds and they all knew me at 130. But yeah, going back to what you had asked earlier is, what was going through my head was I got into college and I knew I needed to eat and I knew I needed to train hard. And that was it. I didn't really think too much into it. I just was having fun. I was just eating whatever I could, for one, whatever I could afford.
Okay.
Because I was broke as a joke.
Which was
then.
what? What were you eating?
I was just I couldn't afford red meat, so I was eating chicken. And I would make these big pasta meals. I would just make this pasta with chicken. If I was on the go, I'd eat canned chicken, and I'd throw like spinach in there and some sort of dressing or salsa or whatever I could get my hands on. And then I was just drinking a couple shakes a day, doing the weight gainer thing. Yep. Just trying to get calories in really and just train hard. And
you must have always had a fast metabolism, I assume.
Yeah, very.
So when was your first show after that?
Yeah, so 2012, like I said, got into college. I was going to college. I ended up moving out in 2013, 14 with my now wife.
You were not married yet, though?
No, we weren't even engaged then yet. We were just boyfriend, girlfriend.
But you were dating in high school?
What's that?
You were dating in high school, correct?
Yeah, we've been dating since 2010.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in a little while. I think you guys will like that story. So you moved out.
Yeah, and then like I said, just was eating. I was going to school full time, and I was working about 35 hours a week at a restaurant as well. So I was really, really busy. I was basically leaving the house at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning and then not getting home till about 11 p.m.
Wow.
Every day. And that was for years. And yeah, so that was basically that. And I just, like I said, I was just eating whatever I could get my hands on and just trying to grow.
Now, when you picked your first show, did you find a coach or did you just go into it?
Yeah, so I had my first show was in 2015,
So not that long ago.
and I wasn't taking any gear prior to 2015, and I just was building naturally for 3-4 years really, and yeah, when I decided I was thinking about doing my first show, I had a buddy who just helped me. He was a local friend of mine, and he basically, we did a 12-week prep, which is pretty short.
Yeah.
And I only met him once a week, and he just gave me macros, which as I coach now, I don't do the whole macro thing. I just write direct meals. But for me,
for your first show, doing based on macros is a little tricky too.
Yeah. And I think that's where genetics helped me and my faster metabolism a little bit. And that I had a general understanding of my body and what kind of foods I need to be eating. And so he would just update me once a week and just say, change your macros to this, change your cardio. And then that was it.
And what show is this?
It was one that's in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So it's a little bit north. It's a couple hours kind of northeast of Indianapolis. It was called the Fort Wayne Flex, and now it's known as the Hoosier Flex.
Okay. And how did you do?
I weighed in at 185.
Okay.
And they put me in the novice middleweight class, and then I also crossed over and did the open light heavy. I won the novice middleweight class, and then I was 13 pounds underweight in the open light heavies, and I got second out of 7 guys there. So that was like my first taste of true bodybuilding and what it entailed.
How was your condition?
You know what? It actually wasn't too bad. I don't know percent wise, but off the top of my head, I mean, I wasn't sub 7% probably. So I wasn't crazy, like peeled like I can get now. But I was shredded.
Yeah.
I was shredded. I had good lines. My legs have been a strong point, as you know. And so, yeah, I had good lines and good shape.
And you were how old?
I was 2015. I was 21.
So you're 21, 185 pounds, first show. And you were not natural anymore for this show, correct?
Correct.
Did you do diuretics?
Yeah, I took a Diazide, and I had no idea about any of this, hardly any of this stuff, 5 years ago. And, but yeah, I took like a half a Diazide the night before. And I remember my coach was texting me, and he didn't charge me to. And that's why it was like I said, I was pretty broke, and he was just helping me kind of get my feet wet. And, but I remember the night before he was like, go have like a big meal. And he said, drink some wine and take some Diazide.
He just said, take some Diazide?
He said, take a half a tab.
With some wine. Good.
Yeah. And it is funny, though, because I dried out really well.
Absolutely. Dorian Yates used to have 2 glasses of dry red wine before his shows. That was his big thing. So I remember when I was young, all these guys were like drinking wine before their shows, and they were like, Dorian Yates did it. And I will admit there was a show where I had a glass of dry red wine the night before the show because it was honoring Dorian Yates. But so now you finished the show. Did you feel like you had a future? Like you were like, I'm ready to go? Or were you like, man, I got a lot of work to do?
It's so funny. It's like I just never got that in depth with it.
Yep.
I mean, I knew I really enjoyed it. And I knew that I called it, and as you know, it's catching the bug. People say, oh, you caught the bug. And my wife and we fought a lot through my first prep because neither of us knew what to expect. And she didn't really like bodybuilding back then.
Why not?
And, what's that?
Why?
Gear. Yeah, she just being completely honest. She didn't understand it and didn't like it, and I didn't know what to expect. And that's just complete transparency, and it was a big learning thing for us. And she stuck with me. And then the minute that I hit the stage, she said that it all changed because she could see me. She saw me light up, and she saw how much of a passion I had for it. And yeah, so that was, I knew that I needed to grow. I knew I needed to learn more and surround myself with people, like-minded people, and keep training hard. And and I didn't know when my next show was going to be because I was still in college. But
was your wife worried that you were going to be unhealthy, or was it like a roid rage type thing, not going to be able to have kids?
I think a little bit of everything, but I think too that there's a media stigma around gear, and you know that, and a lot of guys that take this stuff, we all know it, and it's unfortunate because it is a big stereotype and it is a big stigma that the media kind of has portrayed. So when you tell somebody that, okay, I'm taking gear, I'm not natural, the first response is, oh my God, how could you? Like, it's this horrible thing. And, over the years, she's kind of learned, and I've learned more, and I've sat down and talked to her and explained things more. But yeah, initially it was just, I would have, bigger mood swings, and I didn't know how to control it at the time, and didn't know what to expect. So it was just a little bit of everything, I think.
Good to be understanded. I mean, and it's a good woman that she was worried, but I love the fact that you said once she saw you on stage that, she saw the passion. That is a great woman. I like to hear stories like that. So my first show, I did completely natural, and everyone said I was stupid because I did the Bev Francis Atlantic States, and everyone was like, that's a big show. You're going to get your ass kicked. Everybody there is geared up. And I was like, look, I just want to see what I can do first. I just want to see what I look like. I just want to try as hard as I can and see what happens. And I went all the way natural until the day before the show. I met this woman, and the fuck was her name? Jack pro bodybuilder. Literally one of the biggest pro bodybuilders of all time. I'm not even exaggerating. She was a freak from somewhere in South America. And she was like, you look good, but you're not dry. You need to take these. And she gave me what I now know was a prescription bottle of Lasix. And so she told me to stop drinking water on Thursday night. And I did my carb up. Now, I did my whole prep by myself. So at this point, I was 198, 199 pounds. And I was in pretty good shape. I was pretty good. So I did my carb up, and I did 20 milligrams of Lasix every 4 hours on Friday, and I drank 0 water. So I weighed in at 189, so dropped 10 pounds in one day, even with my carb up. And I was like emaciated, but I was shredded. And anyway, I got 5th place in the light heavyweights, and I was so proud. I was hooked. I was like, I got a fucking shot. And guys backstage were like, you're a natural, aren't you? You're a natural. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, you could tell, but you got a good structure. It's time for you to step it up. And I knew right then and there that I was going to step it up. But that night, so my family, we're trying to figure out where we're going to go to eat. And I started getting real dizzy and really lightheaded. And I still hadn't had any water yet, and I'm going on almost 48 hours of no water after taking Lasix for a day.
Oh, God.
So I started to cramp everywhere. I mean, I was being tough about it. I don't want my parents to, they already were a little nervous about the whole bodybuilding thing anyway. And so we go to eat at this pizza place that everybody from New York will remember. It was over by the Tribeca Performing Arts Center. It's where everybody used to go eat after the show. And I remember just ordering a soda. And then the next thing I remember, I'm in the back of an ambulance, right? And apparently I fainted at the table. And the door opens, and there's a good buddy of mine. His name is Rene Abreu. And he's one of the most brilliant guys I've ever met. We went to school together at UConn. He was kind of like a bit of a mentor to me back then. And he was majoring in exercise physiology, but he had like a minor in chemistry. And he had found out what I did. And he busts open the door to the ambulance, and he's got a Pedialyte. And the guys in the ambulance are like, you can't be in here, you can't be in here. And he was like, he needs to drink this now or he could potentially die. And so I just grabbed the Pedialyte because I trusted him more than the EMT guys. No disrespect to EMT guys. You guys are awesome. And so they're like arguing with him. And he's like, I have a master's degree and blah, 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 blah. And he's like yelling at the guy. He's like, you drive a fucking ambulance. Do you want this guy to die? And I'm just chugging the Pedialyte. And while I'm chugging the Pedialyte, my mom comes to the door and she goes, there's this really, really nice man here. He's huge, and your sister and your brother are hanging out with him, and he wants to make sure that you're okay. Do you want me to get him in here? And I was like, no, I don't want anybody to come in here. I can't even believe I'm in here. And she was like, are you sure? She was like, he's a really nice guy. His name is Jay. And I'm just like, I don't care. I don't want anybody to talk to him. And she was like, he signed this book for your brother, and it was Jay Cutler. And so I was like, oh my God, Mom, Jay Cutler is outside the ambulance. What is he doing? And they're like, he's eating in the restaurant. And we told him what happened. And I was like freaked out. So I got out of the ambulance. I told the guys, I'm fine. I'm getting out of here. And the girl that I was dating, I got in her car and we just hauled ass and left everybody there. We left my family. I was like humiliated. Like, one of my freaking heroes in bodybuilding knows that I'm in an ambulance outside a pizza place like some moron. You know, like I'm thinking like, what must Jay Cutler be thinking in his head right now as the ambulance is outside the pizza place? So I hauled my ass out of there, but that's actually part of the reason why I switched my majors in school and started putting a lot more focus into what I was doing. And eventually, once I graduated and years later, started coaching people. But you go in, you have this good experience, and you're 185 pounds. You're kind of hooked on it. You're a young man. You're a very young man. What goes through your head at this point? As far as what I'm asking is, at this point, are you like, all right, I gotta like get on some serious gear and put on some serious size? Or I know you said that you hadn't looked all that much into it. Were you like, I'm just gonna keep taking my time?
Yeah, so I did want to start experimenting a little bit more with different cycles and different off-season protocols and just different food and you know, kind of old school, just kind of experimenting a little bit and doing my own research and learning and going from there. And so yeah, I started taking some I took like test DECA and D-ball, and that was like my first off-season cycle.
Do you remember the dosages?
It was probably, I think it was like 700, no, it might have been 600 milligrams test.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was 300 milligrams DECA, and I started getting really bad side effects from DECA.
Yeah.
And then what I had learned was that it's really important to keep it at or under half the dosage of test.
Absolutely.
If you're having issues with,
I've been telling people that for years.
Yeah, and it's very important because the minute I think I got up to 750 test, and then I think I bumped DECA like a few weeks later up to 450, and right when I hit 450, it was like I started breaking out, oily skin, bad, my nipples were sensitive, and then D-ball I never went over 50 milligrams, so I started at 25 milligrams for the first week or two. And then just to build a tolerance a little bit, and then bumped it to 50, 25 morning, 25 pre-workout.
Which is a great, for anybody, that's a great off-season cycle overall. I mean, if you can't grow on that, then you're not going to grow. Then it's not meant for you.
Yeah, and when I jumped up. Go ahead.
When you started doing that, how much did you weigh?
Yeah, I weighed maybe like 190, okay. 195.
And you went up to what?
Shoot, I think I got up to 215.
Okay, but you're solid.
Yeah, and I got pretty puffy. Mm-hmm. The D-ball made me hold water quite a bit.
Yep.
So I got really round and bubbly. But it was more of I was a little bit uncomfortable when I was taking that. But it was good. It was a good first little off-season cycle. And I remember I did that off-season cycle another year, or not for a year, excuse me, for like my next off-season, I did the same thing because I had really great results.
And when did you step up to the national level shows?
Yeah, so it's kind of, I really wanted to get back on stage, but I was finishing college. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I was. Huh?
Did you finish college?
Yeah, I have a bachelor's degree in sports management, and I have a minor in business.
Very good.
And impressive. So I was wrapping up college, and I was, like I said, I was living on my own. I was working almost full time, about 30 to 35 hours a week at the restaurant, and I had been promoted. I was a busboy when I started, and within 6 months I was a server. And then after a year of that, right when I turned 21, I got promoted to a bartender, and I was bartending. And then I started managing the restaurant as well when I was 21.
While you were still in college?
Yes.
So you're managing a restaurant and going to college full time?
Yeah, and bodybuilding.
And bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Damn, that's a full schedule. That's a full schedule. And the service industry is a tough industry. I know it. I worked in it also. That's a lot of long hours, long nights. Did you bring your meals with you to work?
Yeah, I did. Yep.
I remember those days. I like to hear stories like that. So your first national level show, you were how old and what was it?
Yeah, so kind of going back to 2018,
Okay.
I stepped on stage first in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get back on stage until 2018 because
break.
like I said, I had graduated in 2016. I got married in 2017. And then 2018, I was like, okay, I'm ready to get back on the stage, and I had grown a lot. So 2018, I did 2 more local shows.
Mm-hmm.
Won both of them, the heavyweight and the overall classes. One was the Indiana Muscle. That's actually in Evansville.
Okay.
And so I did that one first. That was my second show and swept it. And then we went to the Midwest Battle of Champions. That's also known as the Indy Pro.
Okay.
So that show I won the heavyweight and overall there. And then I had a lot of people pressuring me to go to either junior nationals or a national level show that year in 2018. But personally, I knew I was not ready. I didn't think I was enough caliber to win the show, and I was fine with being patient.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I needed to probably put on at least 10 more pounds to be really competitive, because I only was like 205.
Were you looking at the guys that were winning nationals? Were you looking at them?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just knew, you were like, I need more time.
I just didn't think I had the size and the maturity yet really to be at that level.
Out of curiosity, is there anyone in your head that you looked at closely, like, all right, I got to get like this? Is there a bodybuilder that you can remember?
No, not really. I mean, I kind of watched, well, for one, Derek Lunsford.
Yep.
And that's mainly because we're from the same state and that we're good friends. And so I knew, he had won junior nationals a couple times, and I just knew, I was like, I'm not there yet.
Yep.
So, I talked to my coach, and I was working with Matt Kuba at the time. Since like late 2017 is when I started working with him. And I just talked to him.
I'm just curious how you guys started working together.
I found him through Aceto.
Really?
Yeah, because Chris posts, some of his competitors and his guys, and I think I had seen Matt pop up on one of Aceto's posts, and I really admired Aceto's work, but I knew I probably couldn't afford him, nor I didn't know if he would take me.
He is the best. I always say Aceto is the best. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. And I had been following him for a few years, but then when he posted Matt, I kind of was intrigued, and I saw that Matt was in Chicago, which is only about 3 hours from me. And then I just kind of I reached out. I just had a good vibe. I had good vibes from him, and I don't know, I had a hunch. I just went with a gut instinct, and so we started working together, and like I said, 2018 won a couple shows, and I talked to him, and I said, what if we, and this was March of 2018, and I said, what if we do like 15 months, really, really strict, successful, full-on off-season, because I never had an off-season with a coach before that. And so I said, what if we, do this, and then we aim for junior nationals 2019 and then USAs.
Okay.
And that was the plan from March of 2018 until the day we did it. And that he said that was a great plan.
Now, were you, for that entire time, were you on gear that whole time?
In 2018,
from the time when you were 15 months out and you said, let's go through this, were you on gear the whole time?
No.
I had 2.
Yeah, I had 2 phases where I was off.
How long were you off for?
The first one was right directly post show, which and it's very smart for most people to come off and detox right after a show with running, pretty heavy on compounds. So I took some time off. I don't remember the exact dates. I think I was probably off like 8 to 10 weeks.
Yep.
Post show, and then we started up like kind of in the summer of 18, and then I did have a pretty lengthy time on gear, probably 4 or 5 months.
Totally normal.
Yeah, and just for off season, we were just gradually kind of introducing new compounds and new things, and and then before we started prep, I took another like 10 weeks off.
So you were actually being quote unquote conservative by taking these off seasons and actually taking these breaks. So he's a very young man, guys, and I actually used to do that when I was younger too. But I can guarantee you, and I don't care who gets mad at me, I have numerous friends in the industry, older guys, that many of them were like, oh, I've been on for 4 years. I've been on for 5 years, And so at a very young age, I think it is actually far more important to take the breaks that he did and to take those periods to detox his body. After a show is a great time to do it. That is actually what I typically used to do, although I used to wait about 6 weeks before I would do it, because you have a great period after the show where if you reverse diet the right way and do things right, you can actually catch some nice growth. And also, if you go, pedal to the metal to the show, which a lot of guys do this too, and I always, I'm like, come on, why do you think you're feeling so bad? And then they just bail out on everything after the show. The drop that you get is far, far worse. I think, what was that, the Hellcat that I just heard start up outside? My dad must be leaving me. Maybe it's a very loud car. And so, you were actually being pretty damn conservative, but you're also very young. And you're going into your plan now. You have your pro card plan on the line. And we don't want to give away all the secrets and whatnot either. Some guys are more okay with talking about that stuff than others. But when you got into your plan for these shows, were you running growth hormone? Were you running high amounts of tests? Like, what was your plan for these shows? You look very young and healthy still.
Yeah, and I feel really, really good. I feel very healthy, and Matt knows my body so well, and he and I click and just communicate very well. We have very similar ideas about how training should be, how the gear should be. So we are in sync with each other very, very well. And there wasn't like with Matt, and it's similar with Aceto. You'll hear stories about Aceto and how it's like, sometimes it's like fly by the night. It's just like make a change randomly, and you just don't really understand why. So it's the same with Matt. We never really had he didn't tell me, okay, you're going to do this much gear this week, and then here's your plan. It was just like, what's the body looking like? How are you feeling? How's blood work? How's digestion? And then we're going to make changes accordingly. But yeah, when we started prep, gear always starts really low for me. Like when in my off phases, I'll either be completely off or I'll run a cruise dose of 150 or 200 milligrams of test. And we keep in a Arimidex a little bit just to, keep the estrogen in check.
Absolutely, very smart.
Yeah, but then when we start, test will only go up to 500, and he'll introduce EQ at 150.
Yeah, very mild.
Yeah, and very, very mild. And then, and then a week or two later, he might jump it up to 700 or 750 test, 200 EQ, 300 EQ. And then Arimidex will bump up to daily or every other day, depending on how I'm looking with my water, how my body's holding water, reacting to the compounds. But yeah, we were running the peak of prep. I think I was up to 1,200 milligrams of test, which is pretty high for me. And for me at that, I almost look better at 1,000 milligrams.
Okay.
Because when you start to get over a gram of tests a week, you start to look a little bit watery, depending on the individual. But
how much Arimidex were you running at that high of amount of tests?
Still just 1 milligram a day.
Okay, but that's smart. That's a smart way to do it.
Yep, 1 milligram a day. But yeah, we were taking growth hormone. I started growth hormone a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We did introduce insulin, but again, we're very, very mild with that. And EQ. EQ is we don't normally go with DECA too often in the off seasons anymore. We like EQ and how it looks, how I feel, and
not
how
a big
I look
fan of DECA
that.
myself either.
Yeah, I just if test is high enough, we might put DECA in, at 300 milligrams, but really no more than that in the off season.
I myself personally found that over 300 milligrams, no matter what, I got DECA, which to me, even on a lot of tests, just wasn't worth it to me. When there were all these other things that could make you feel great, how am I going to take something that makes it so I can't, to explain what DECA is to the listeners that don't know at this point is your dick will still get hard, but it's not like all the way hard, and it's very hard to finish. And it's a bummer, it's not normal.
It's a tease.
It really is. And not being able to go through and finish like that, to me, coupled with the fact that DECA always made me very bloated. It always gave me a strange, like, watery look. And any issues that I ever had with acne typically came with DECA also. Now, this is under 300 milligrams. It was over that is when all the bad stuff happened. So when people really want to do it, I actually am more of an EQ guy myself. But what I do tell people is if you're trying to really push it and grow, you're going to have to be a little bit more aggressive with the EQ dose than the DECA dose. So if you're somebody that you felt like you liked DECA at 300 milligrams, you're probably going to need 500 milligrams of EQ to get those kind of gains. Some people might disagree with me. I mean, I've actually been as high as 800 milligrams a week with EQ and had fantastic results, not really any side effects that were negative, whereas the DECA always had problems.
Yeah, I'll say, I mean, when we were at peak off season of 2018 growing into 2019, and that's when I was starting to push, God, I got up to almost 240. And for me with my background in that it's very hard for me to grow.
Yeah.
That was big. That was big for me. I think I was 239 or 240 after 5 meals one day out of 7. But and that's one thing, I mean, I know we're talking about gear, but I do kind of want to reiterate is that it all revolves around training intensity and your food, most importantly. And that's what a lot of these listeners, if guys don't know about gear as much, is gear is the sprinkles on top.
Absolutely.
You need to have your base of training intensity, eating, getting your sleep, and then you can sprinkle in the gear. But I mean, I was eating 7 meals a day. I think I was eating 800 to 900 grams of carbs daily, 450 grams of protein, and about 120 grams of fat every day. And that was for over 3 months straight. Plus, I think I was having 3 cheat meals a week.
What were your cheat meals normally?
I'm a burger and fry guy.
Burger and fries. So you weren't doing like Juan Morel, like going to town. Burger and fries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not the 20,000 calorie ice cream stuff.
So when you went through juniors, after you got off stage at juniors, what was going through your mind? Because this is when I just so everybody knows, this is when I actually started paying attention to Nathan Epler, where I was like, you know what? I knew he was young. Somebody else had told me that he was young. And I was guessing, I was like, man, he must be like 25 years old. He's a young guy. And he reminded me in many ways of Cody Montgomery, with the very good separation, the great glutes, the young, healthy look. So I started paying attention very close at juniors. Now, juniors, what did you weigh?
I weighed in like 215 or so. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 214, 215 at junior nationals. And when I got off stage, well, it's pretty weird because So I hadn't been on stage in over a year from
Mhm.
2018 to 2019. So I remember and I'd never been on a national level stage,
Yep.
and I didn't do any local shows in 2019. So I was a little bit nervous. And then plus, you always have this look. You always have this look in your head of what you look like,
Mhm.
and no matter how good you look, you're picturing something else.
Yeah.
And with me being small my whole life, I always still think I'm tiny.
Mhm.
And so I'm looking around at these guys that are weighing in at 220, 225, 224, and I'm like 10 pounds lighter and shorter than some of these guys.
And you're like, holy shit.
And they're cutting from 260,
Yeah.
270 to get
That's what I
down.
used to do.
And I was like, I was trying not to get in my own head, but I was a little bit nervous. And but then all I could think was, that's okay, because they had to cut 50 pounds to get down, and I just tried to grow into the show. And when I started my prep, I was 220, and I got on stage at 215.
Yep.
And
Which is amazing. That's fucking amazing.
and I'm very thankful that that's how my body has kind of reacted and been the last few years. But yeah, so I got off. So junior nationals happened. After prejudging, I was like, holy shit, like I could win the heavyweight class.
Mhm.
Like, this is crazy. And then, junior nationals is a big show, and
Yeah.
it was very long and drawn out. And I didn't even compete in the finals till like 9 p.m.,
Mhm.
maybe 9:30. And I won the heavyweight class. And then I was like, okay, now I got a shot for an overall. And they put me in the middle, didn't move me. And then we won the overall. And I was just, it was very surreal, I guess, is the only thing I can say about it, because I was so thankful, and my prep had been really good. And I felt like I belonged.
Mhm.
I felt like I belonged. I felt like I deserved the win, and I was very excited for USA's.
And after that, I'm trying to remember. My brain can't remember shit anymore. When did you and I start talking?
I think it was maybe like a week or two after juniors, because juniors happened. And
Mhm.
it's so funny, because I was just watching another episode of the Ask PJ,
Mhm.
and how you were talking about how you serial like people's photos. And it was funny, because I remember I had a couple likes on my photos from you. And I remember looking at my wife, and I was like, holy shit, like PJ just liked my stuff. And then you commented a couple times, and I thought, man, and Blackstone Products, I had been using Blackstone Products for years. I even had a Blackstone Labs sticker on the back of my first vehicle that I bought myself.
How fucking amazing is that? Excuse my language. He had
Dude,
a
I'm not
Blackstone
even-
sticker on his first vehicle.
You can ask anybody, and I shit you not, I had that sticker on there. I bought the car. It was a black Chevy Malibu, and I bought the car, and I ordered some product, and I got one of the stickers, and I slapped it right on the paint. Bumper, didn't give a shit. And I had that on there from, God, like 2014 until I sold the car in 2017.
Did you pull it off the car?
Yeah, but it was like, it ripped apart, because it was like, it had been all through the weather and stuff and snow. So it was like I had to chip it off of there.
I'll tell you what. Now that I know that story, I will fucking take care of you for life. Now that I know that story, that is a hell of a story.
Yeah, and so I had been using the products and been a big fan for several years, since like 2013 or 14, and then we kind of started messaging, and then I think it was maybe like 2 or 3 weeks before USA's, we kind of really linked up, and that's when things started taking off.
And I remember the reason I was asking is because you were actually giving me updates as you were going into USA's, and I was actually telling everybody behind the scenes, I was like, this guy is going to win USA's. This is going to be my new guy. And I was showing all the guys in the call center. I actually was. Sometimes we do that, and if people don't like this, sorry, it's just the way it is. And you think, it's supposed to be private when you talk to me, and it is. I do keep shit private. But I was so excited for you that I started sending your check-in pics to everybody in my call center chat, which is just like 10 guys. Sammy's in there, who's an IFBB pro, other guys that are competing. And I was like, look at this kid, he's going to win USAs. And everybody was like, holy shit. And the comments too were also like, oh, he has like a Cody type look. And I was like, obviously I like what Cody looks like a lot. He's been with us for fucking 7 years. Yeah. So, it really caught my eye. And going into USAs, I mean, the condition that you had in your glutes and your hams, I was like, I'll tell you what, this guy, unless some fucking ogre shows up in the super heavyweights, is going to win the overall.
Yeah.
And then the overall came, and it was a very, very good battle.
Oh, yeah.
And I must be honest, I'm not saying it because he's sitting here. When I watched, I thought you won the overall, and I actually think I made a post saying that you won the overall. And I think a lot of people thought that you won the overall too, because we were watching the video. And you didn't win the overall. The super heavyweight won. Were you like, fuck it, I got my pro card, like this, or were you like, damn, I wanted the overall?
I really wanted that overall.
Yeah.
I did, and we battled hard for that overall, and Zach is a very deserving champion, and it was very fun because he and I were talking a lot backstage, and he was very, very humble and very kind, and I respect that a lot because that's how I try to carry myself as well. And so that meant a lot to me. And we hung out backstage a lot. I mean, for like a couple hours, even leading up to the finals. And for finals, I peaked really, really well. Mm-hmm. I was still a touch flat at prejudge, looking back at the photos. But we were really trying to get me dry. Mm-hmm. And then a day later, I peaked so hard. I was so full, like I was bursting at the seams full, extremely round. But I didn't spill at all. Matt kept everything very under control, so I didn't spill. So I thought I could win this. I really could. And I was very confident that there was a chance. And I no disrespect to him. He's a very good bodybuilder. I looked at everything very closely. He's a big guy, and he was in great shape. I really thought that you had the overall, and I looked at it very closely a bunch of times. I thought you had a more pleasing physique. And I think based on the way that your lines and structure are, you didn't look considerably smaller than him in any way. And you were very full and very round. You really did present what I thought was an overall more pleasing look. But bodybuilding is completely subjective. That's the name of the game, guys. That's the name of the game. And I tell people that all the time. Yeah. And Zach, he had about 50 pounds on me, which
he was large.
And from the photos, I really, a lot of people say, oh, you only look like you're 10 pounds different.
Yeah, I would say that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I was very competitive, and on stage, I will say this as well, is I'm very strategic about my posing. And the reason why is I'm constantly watching the floor. Mm-hmm. So when we transition, I'm looking at where people are standing. And that way I can try to make sure that I'm not behind
Very
them.
Important.
Yeah, and that was something that I didn't start doing until this year, but I got really strategic when I was on stage, knowing that these guys could be bigger than me. Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure that I'm showing the judges exactly what they need to see. And we battled, and when we got when Zach won, I was pissed for a second. For like a split second, I was like pissed. And then I was like, shit, I just won my pro card. Who cares? Like, good. It's fine.
And you really did a hell of a job with the prep for that show. I mean, you came in spectacular. I think that when you do a show, you want to win. Obviously, there's an objective of getting a pro card, but you're going in to be the best that you can possibly be. Yeah. And I would say that I've only had that happen like maybe one time in all the times I competed. And I think for you, if you win in that show, maybe you said you were a little flat at prejudging, which is frustrating. But if you left the stage and you knew that was the best that you could possibly be, and that's the outcome, you can't really walk away like sad from that.
Yep. Yeah. And that's exactly how I thought, is because I was initially slightly upset. that's exactly what went through my head as well. Is I couldn't have been any better.
Yeah.
There's no way in hell I would have been any better at this moment. And so we left no stone unturned. I did everything to a T. I never missed a cardio session. I never missed a meal. I never missed any of my gear. I was very meticulous, and I was still working full time while I was prepping for these shows as well. And it's funny. Here's a story for you. When we got backstage and Zach won, and he was going to have some photos taken, and he had to do an interview. Jim Mannion he was backstage as well, and he was talking to Zach, and I wasn't trying to interrupt, but I did want to congratulate Zach because we battled.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of butted in just real quick, and I said, hey, just wanted to say congrats, really excited for you. We battled. That was fun. Good luck. And then it was literally 10 seconds, and I started to turn to walk away, and Jim Mannion looked at me and grabbed me up by the arm, and he looked at both of us, and he said, this was the hardest call in the whole show of the 2019 USAs.
I believe it. That's awesome.
He said this was almost split right down the middle. He said it was the hardest decision to make.
And Mr. Mannion calls it like it is too. So that's a cool thing for him to say.
It was, and that made me feel good to know that I was battling with him. And Zach's been on the national scene, I think, for 4 years or so. I'm not sure exactly how many times he's done national level shows, but I know he's been doing them for a while. So that was very cool to me to be competitive with, again, some of the guys that are up and coming.
I mean, this happened very fast for you, bro.
Yeah.
It really did.
Yeah.
I mean, there are guys that grind and grind and grind, and then Masters comes around and they never make it. And then some of them do finally get it in the Masters. Look at somebody like John Meadows,
Yeah.
You're so fucking young.
Yeah.
And you're a pro. And you from what I took earlier, you own a house already.
Well, I did, but I sold it.
You sold it. Okay. So you already have bought and sold a house.
Yeah.
Which is outstanding. And you're married.
Mm-hmm.
And you're now, I don't want to say it like this because people are going to be like, give me a break. But you're now at a point in life where, in my opinion, you got to be like, you know what? I have all the things that are really important. How do I take it to the next level? Which is a perfect fucking time to now go on your mission as a pro bodybuilder because you're starting over, but you've already accomplished so many fucking things.
Yeah.
And so you've picked out a pro show, which is the first show is what?
It's the Indy Pro in my hometown.
Makes complete sense. He told me that he wanted to do that from the start. And your goal is to weigh what at that show?
I'm going to be in the 212 division.
So at USA's, you're how much?
So that's what's funny is when I got on a flight for USA's, I actually weighed about 217 or 218, but my weight class was up to 225, so it didn't matter. But when we water cut, I got down to 211 the morning of the show.
And you were shredded, but you said you felt a little bit on the flatter side.
Just a touch, yeah.
So now your objective is to grow, get bigger, get better.
Yeah.
But do all of that with only 1 pound to work with from what you weighed in at USA's. Does that stress you out at all?
No.
Okay.
No. I think I trust Matt so much. And I mean, it doesn't stress me out, but it is something that's on the back of my mind because right now I'm about 8 to 9 pounds bigger than I was at this point in prep last year. So, and I'm significantly leaner.
Yeah. I mean, you're lean.
Yeah.
Very
so
lean.
it does go through my head, but I was a wrestler.
Yep.
I've cut lots of weight before. And I trust Matt. So I'm just sticking to my guns.
So let's talk about this real quick because you're going to have to cut hard at the end. So when you were doing USA's, what did your cardio get up to?
It was up for a little bit, up to like 45 or 50 minutes, just once a day.
Okay. And is that steady state or what are you, step mill, treadmill? What are you doing?
Yeah, just treadmill, incline walk.
So no step mill at all.
No step mill at
Still
all.
had those glutes. Now let me fucking tell you guys something. Excuse my language. Genetically, the glutes are such an interesting muscle because it takes perfect dieting and it takes meticulous planning and it takes hard work. But I will tell you this right now. I have seen some guys, I'm going to call out my boy Guy Cisternino right now, who had glutes at like 8 weeks out, nasty, but still had a belly. Strangest thing. And by belly, I just mean he didn't have abs, right?
Yeah.
And some guys just have freaky glutes. And Nathan is one of those guys. I'll tell you what, it is a gift that I hope that you appreciate, and it's not taking anything away from your hard work, because I'll tell you guys right now, when you turn around and you've got nasty glutes,
oh yeah,
they're going to look at you. I've seen guys get looked at with the rest of them sucks because they have nasty glutes. Now, the rest of you is good, fortunately. But when you have nasty glutes like that, that's why I torture my people, and people are like, they get upset sometimes. And also, I've had some freaky girls that I've competed with, like Karina Nascimento, whose glutes got so shredded in women's physique that I actually had to like tell her to chill out a lot, and she wasn't really doing that much cardio. But then I've had these guys that are busting out 2 45-minute sessions, still kind of like softer back there. And I'm like, look, here's the deal. We've tried everything else. We've tried to figure this out. I'm believing that you're not cheating and that you're doing all the things that you're doing. Your ass is still too soft.
Yeah.
Like as Dave Palumbo used to tell me, your ass still looks like my grandma's. And, he was the first person that got that in my head about glutes. Yeah. And, you have like an ace in the hole, as they say, when you turn around with your genetic structure with the glutes. So now what you need to do is keep building everything else bigger.
Yeah.
And then come down. So I'm assuming that you're going to probably have to do more cardio and a little bit more, probably a little bit more suffering at the end to make the 212 this time.
Yeah, I'm going to have to suffer in the last week. And that's normally we start my carb up like on Tuesday.
Damn.
Yeah, I get the food back in quick. My body looks so much better with more food.
I believe
and
it.
It's so ass backwards, but it's the truth with me is I look way better when I have more food. And so I know already I won't get the food added back in until like we're probably ready to get on stage or a couple days out. I know I'll need a certain period of time to restore glycogen in the muscles so I'm full, but chances are, I've already talked about this with my wife. I'm like, I might not sleep the night before the show because I might be eating every freaking hour after I have to make the weight class.
That's one of the cool things about most of the pro shows is you have time to eat up after you make the weight.
Yeah.
Now, you and your wife have been together since you were how old?
16.
So you've been together since you were 16. That's a long ass time. I love it because I love to hear stories of people that have been together for that long, growing up together. What is obviously she's your main supporter. What is her role in all this? Does she help a lot? Does she stay out of your way? How does that all work out?
She lets me do what I need to do.
That's key.
It is very key. And she does, like if I tell her I need chicken cooked or I need help with something, she doesn't question me. She'll get up and do the dishes or, do whatever, take the dogs out, just help me. And she's been my rock when I start to get in those last, 4 to 6 weeks and I'm like brain dead and like, dragging my feet. Like it's funny. I talked to Matt this year. I was like, my feet and legs feel heavy. He said, heavy legs equal peeled.
Yeah, that's true.
Like you feel like you can't pick your legs up. Like you literally are like skidding your feet across the floor. And yeah, she's just been my biggest fan and my number one supporter. And we grew up together. We were through sports together. Funny story. I'll give you a side story. This is crazy. And I have proof of this. We played on the same soccer team when we were 5 years old.
No way.
Swear on it.
So you guys really
Yeah.
it was almost like fate that you guys were supposed to be together.
Crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. And then we became good friends in middle school. And then in high school, we started dating when we were 16. And now we've been together almost 10 years.
Was there ever a point in school where you didn't like each other?
No, not
So
at
you've
all.
always got along great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's funny. All my buddies, she literally hangs out with me and all my buddies, and all of them say she's one of the guys. She's just one of the guys.
I'll tell you, people, those are the better ones. I promise you that. Take it from somebody that's been through it.
Yeah.
And now I know she's getting home soon, so I'm not going to drag you on too much longer. This has been a great podcast. It's been very interesting, and I think that people are going to really like your story a lot. I knew some of your story. I know a lot more now, and I've really enjoyed going through this with you. What, to end it on a really interesting and fun and high note, what is the plan going through this year from a business perspective, from a bodybuilding perspective, from a personal perspective? We're in January. Fuck New Year's resolutions. We're not talking about any of that shit. We're just talking about where your year is starting and where are you going?
Yeah. So, and I'll kind of recap too. Like last year was an absolutely insane year. It was a huge year. There was so much going on. Just absolutely ridiculous. Because like I said, I was working full time, and I actually worked for a mortgage company for 3 years. So I was working about 40 to 45 hours a week, writing loans and doing assistant work, stuff like that, while I was bodybuilding. But after, and I knew I kind of wanted to get out of that industry. I really wanted to get into coaching more, because I've been coaching for about 4 years. And over the last couple, it started really taking off. And I was like, man, I could maybe, do this as a career, but I just didn't know. I didn't know how to bridge the gap.
Yeah.
I didn't know the plan of attack. And after USA's, 3 days after USA's, I quit my job.
Yeah, I remember when you told me that.
I knew I just wanted to pursue my passion. And it was a little bit rocky, but we're doing very well. And then, like I said, we sold our house, and we actually didn't even have to sell our house, but the way the market is, it was a good move for us.
Good for you.
It was more of a lateral move. And so then going into this year, I'm running my own business. I'm coaching, personal training, doing all that. And the goal right now, for one, is just to stay consistent, just continue to do what we've been doing for the last couple of years, because it's been highly successful. So we're not changing a whole lot. I'm continuing to work hard with my clients and my coaching business. And then we're looking at the Indie Pro, where we think that we have a good chance to win that show. So the goal obviously is to win there and then pursue the 2020 Olympia.
Amazing. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
Well, you've done a hell of a job, man.
I appreciate that.
I've been impressed with you from the start. And I think what impresses me the most about you is not necessarily just your physique and that you're a very nice and humble guy. It's the fact that you're a nice, humble guy with that physique so young. Yep. That is what is truly impressive about you. You have a very good head on your shoulders, and I think that you're going to do a lot of great things, not just in bodybuilding, but I think that in your career. And I wish you the best success. I've met your wife. She's a very, very sweet girl. You guys seem like a really great pair. I think that you are the kind of person that bodybuilders should look up to. And I remember there was a point where I don't know if it was Charles Barkley maybe who said that athletes are not role models. He made this big statement about it. And in many ways, athletes really shouldn't be role models. They really shouldn't be. And many bodybuilders should not be role models either. That's for damn sure.
Yeah.
And you look up to like certain guys that you don't know anything about, but I hope that people listen to this podcast and they walk away from it that they say, man, that's a guy that I'd like to be like, because you're a really good guy and you've done some fucking awesome things. So I salute you for that.
I appreciate that very much. Yeah, it means a lot.
I appreciate you coming on here. This was a very good podcast. And, of course, we'll keep talking more.
Yeah. No, and I wanted to say too, real quick, is, I really appreciate you guys and what you've done for me, and Blackstone, becoming like family to me, and the other athletes and stuff. Because I've looked up to Cody, and Keon, and especially Cody Montgomery. I've been following him since he did teen nationals.
Yeah.
So, and it's been cool to become a teammate and like family with you guys and my other sponsors and stuff. And so I'm thankful and just excited for 2020 and what we're going to bring.
Any shout outs or plugs? And also, if anybody wants to reach out to you for coaching, how should they do that? I mean, how are we going to close this out?
Yeah. So my Instagram handle is IFBB_Nathan_Epler. You can find me there. You can also send me an email at epler.elite@gmail.com. That's my business is Epler Elite Training and Nutrition. So you can hit me up either one of those ways. And couple shout outs. Obviously, shout out to my amazing wife. She's fantastic, Alexa. Shout out to my coach, Matt Kuba. He's done a wonderful job and been there for me the whole time. Shout out to you guys, Blackstone, you, PJ, and just my family and friends. I just can't thank everybody enough. It's exciting, and you can't do bodybuilding without a team. And even though people say it's an individual sport, you got to have a team around you to get through it.
This is really cheesy, but I also want to ask before we go, what Blackstone Labs products are you using right now?
I'm using a lot of Blackstone Labs products. Shoot. God. Well, I'm using the Dust V2 and Hype Reloaded. That's the pre-workout combo that I'm using right now. That's absolutely fantastic. Okay. And the first time I took Hype Reloaded, I will say I was cramping because I didn't realize the potassium chloride is really strong.
It is very strong. You guys got to drink really a lot of water before. I tell everybody 45 minutes before you train, try to drink. I always tell people, if you could do 32 ounces of water, it'll make that product work way, way, way better. If you could do more than that, that's fine. But it's no joke. Don't just dry scoop it and go. Don't just take it before you get to the gym. You've got to take a lot of extra water with it.
Yeah, I don't even – most of my pre-workout, like if I take Dust X, I'll mix it with 8 ounces of water. Mm-hmm. But if I take Dust V2 and Hype Reloaded, I don't even mix it. I mix it with 25 ounces of water.
Good.
And so I'm taking those. The isolation protein is fantastic because the digestion is kick-ass, and I have no bloating on it, which I've taken all kinds of proteins, and my protein is pre-workout, and I've had proteins that sit like a brick in your stomach. So the digestion's fantastic. What else? I'm taking Recomp RX. I'm taking MyoStack. I'm taking the IGF-1. I'm still on that. I'm taking I just added Carnitrim in because I'm going to add that before my cardio. Yep. I'm taking the multivitamin. I'm taking the gear support.
You're on the arsenal. Now, one thing I didn't notice that you say I'm interested by, are you not using Glycolog?
I haven't been. So I typically take Glycolog when I'm not taking insulin, when I'm not taking like Humalog, because I'm very, very sensitive to insulin responses. Mm-hmm. And so typically what I do is, and like right now I'm not taking insulin. Mm-hmm. So I'm adding back in the Glycolog, but previously I was taking Humalog, and so I didn't want to take Glycolog as well and have a chance where I could potentially go hypo.
Out of curiosity, how much Humalog do you use?
It just depends, and it depends on the time of year, or I guess it depends on if I'm on the off season or if I'm in prep. But like, for example, in prep, I'll usually take anywhere from 3 to 6 IUs in the morning before meal one, and then typically again we'll take anywhere from like 5 to 8 IUs pre-workout. Those are very, very high carb meals for me. And again, it just kind of It varies. Like before junior nationals, I remember I was taking 8 IUs before breakfast, and I got up to like 10 or 12 IUs pre at one
Yeah,
point.
that's still fairly conservative, by the way,
Yep.
guys. So I've used the most I used was 10 units 3 times a day.
Yeah.
And I actually have spoken to some guys who work with some gurus that I've been pretty blown away by some of the numbers that these guys are using. But I have a buddy, he's not with the company anymore, a very nice guy, that was using 80 units a day of Humalog, but he was also eating like 1,000 grams of carbs a day. And I was like, that is fucking nuts. He
Yep.
also had a very, very bloated midsection. It was just too much food and too much insulin, in my opinion. So what you're doing is very conservative. There are people that are very afraid of insulin. They don't understand it. They don't understand how to use it the right way. I encourage, if you haven't watched it, I encourage you and anybody else that's listening to this to please watch the video that I did with Jennifer Strobo on Glycolog. It is, I think it's probably the most powerful, as far as a product goes, it's probably the most powerful video that I've ever put out, because she's a type 1 diabetic. And she found out that she had diabetes when she was 8 years old. We've been friends for years. I started sending her Glycolog years ago. Her doctor loved it. And so when she started using Glycolog, she prefers a combo of Humalog and Novolog, both very fast acting. So when she started using Glycolog, she was using about 20 units of insulin a day, which for a type 1 diabetic is still very low. And now she consistently only uses about 7 or 8 units a day, because the Glycolog controls her blood sugar so well. And she actually told a story about how on Sundays she does what she calls Sunday Fun Day. And she'll eat about 5,000 calories spaced out over a long period of time. And she bookends it with Glycolog. And, she wears a glucose monitor, of course. And when she wakes up in the morning, she's usually around 110 after 5,000 calories of fucking cookies and cereal and all kinds of other shit. That for many of you won't understand that. That's very, very impressive.
Oh yeah.
And that just shows you how incredible that product is at controlling your blood sugar. And that's why I push that product on people so much. By the way, we can't medically, of course, prescribe these things. We're not doing that. We're not saying if you're a diabetic that, you can change your medicine. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying, look at this example of somebody that's really enhanced what she's been able to eat as far as really more carbohydrates and utilize less medicine because of it. That's why I always ask if everybody's using that product. But you are using a lot of the products and using them all very wisely. And yeah. I appreciate that. And I didn't want to get corny and end it on the supplement stuff, because we actually did cover some great stuff today.
I'll tell you, I'll interject here, and I'll tell you a funny story. This is cool. This is before junior nationals. My pre-workout meal was 2 bakery muffins. So a lot of you guys may already know this, but I was eating a bakery muffin from Costco. It's 75 grams of carbs per muffin.
Yep.
I don't even know the fat content.
Very similar to the Dunkin' Donuts ones that I've always, I have a couple of my guys that I have doing Dunkin' Donuts muffins. They're 75 grams of carbs.
Yeah, so these are big, and I had a bakery muffin and a protein shake pre-workout every day for 18 weeks last prep.
Let me tell you something. This guy is way younger than me. He's like 14 years younger than me. I was telling Billy Gagliardo the other day that I prepped on a protein shake and a goddamn Dunkin' Donuts blueberry muffin before my workouts, because he was like, can we change this around a little bit, especially because he's off season? And I was like, yeah, we can. And I was like, I didn't want to throw this at you, but you can absolutely eat, especially if it's this specific muffin, because I know the exact macros to it. And his mind was like blown by that. And now I see these guys now. Everybody has their little things. I actually originally got that from Chris Aceto a million years ago, right? So
muffin pump.
You can't beat it. I see guys that are eating like English muffins all the time. That's a new one now, is the English muffins. Like, you'll see guys eating like 4 English muffins and shit like that. And I'm like, man, you guys don't even know. You don't even know about the goddamn just regular muffin.
Yeah.
So
this funny story is, before junior nationals, I did a photo shoot, and it was my last workout, and Matt said, okay, I want you to have 2 scoops of whey, only mix it with 8 ounces of water though, because we were cutting water.
Yeah.
And then he said, have 2 bakery muffins and 10 units of insulin. I said, okay, got it. So I did it. This is how sensitive I am to insulin and to food. I started to go hypo with 150 grams of carbs from muffins and 10 units of insulin.
Well, I can tell your metabolism is fast.
It's crazy. It's just ridiculous. And so literally I was driving, and within 20 minutes after eating, I started getting the cold sweats. I started like getting a little agitated. Like I really quickly got agitated. And then I was getting a little bit like tunnel vision, and I was like, shit. And so I didn't talk to Matt because my initial response was I can't pass out.
Yeah.
And I'm driving. And so a buddy of mine, my 2 training partners and guys that I coached into junior nationals with me, I was like, do you guys have some muffins on you? And they were like, yeah, but they had the smaller ones. But I was like, that's okay. I said, I'm just going to have to eat this because I don't want to go hypo. We're driving on the interstate right now. Absolutely. I said, give me a muffin right now. And so then I ate, one that was like 40 grams of carbs additional. And then immediately 5 minutes later, I was fine. Matt knows me so well. I did the photo shoot. He commented on one of the pictures and said, wow, you look really full here. Do you have an extra muffin? Swear.
That's good stuff. That's the kind of coach that you want.
No kidding. But yeah, so I'm super sensitive when it comes to that stuff. So
that's a great story.
Yeah.
But you're doing everything really, really wisely. So, and you look good. You look healthy. I hope you stay healthy and injury free, and you just keep progressing the way that you do. And we're going to be rooting you on this year. Awesome podcast. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We'll get this thing out in a week or so.
Awesome.
And we'll be in touch in that downtime.
Cool.
All right, man.
Sounds good. Thanks, PJ.
I end these things the same way every time. Fantastic guest. Thank you so much, Nathan Epler, for coming on. And as always, peace out. Bye, guys.